The Loss of HMS Pembroke by Alfred H Miles. B.Y. Master, Cambridge. The melancholy fate of the Namur, which was lost at the same time and place as the Pembroke, has already been related. The calamity which befell the latter was, if possible, still more deplorable. Out of her whole crew, only 12 persons were saved. Her commander, Captain Fincher, and about 330 men were drowned, among whom were all the officers excepting a captain of marines. The following particulars of this disaster are given by an eyewitness, Mr. Cambridge, the master. About 10 o'clock in the morning of Apath, 1749, it blew fresh, the wind at northeast by east, and a great sea began to come in. We having then a cable out, the captain ordered half a cable more to be veered away. At 1 in the afternoon, it blew very hard, the wind at northeast. His Majesty's ship Namur, lying about a cable's length within us and abaft our beam, I went to the captain, as did likewise the lieutenants, and desired him to go to sea. He replied, he could not answer to go to sea unless the Namur did, on board which Rear Admiral Boscan's flag was flying, but ordered all our ports to be barred in and well secured. At 3 o'clock I went to the captain, who was sick and in his cabin, and again desired him to go to sea. He seemed angry, and said he could not, giving the same reason as before, nor would he suffer any more cable to be veered away. At the same time the ship rode hard, strained much, and made water. At 5, the sea increasing, our cable parted, and we cast our head off to the sea, otherwise we should have fallen on board the Namur. We immediately set the fore and mizzen sails, got on board the main-tack, and set our mainsail, fore and mizzen staysails. At the same time some of our people were employed in heaving in the cable, for the captain would not have it cut. This took up some time. It blew so very hard that the ship would not bear any more sail. At 6, there being a great head sea, we made very little way, and were obliged to set both pumps to work. At 6:30 our main sail split in pieces. We got down the yard in order to bend a new sail, but it blowing hard, the ship lay down so much that we could not get the sail to the yard. At 8 the carpenter sent word to the captain that the ship gained upon them much, and had 4 feet of water in her hold. At 8:30 our tiller broke short off at the rudder head, and we likewise found one of the rudder chains broken. The sails we had now set were our foresail, mizzen, and forestay sails. The sea made a free passage over us, and the ship being water-logged, we hauled up our foresail to ease her, but expected to go down every minute. In hauling down our forestay sail it split, and as I looked aft from the forecastle, I saw the main and mizzen masts had gone, though I never heard them go. By this time the ship righted much, and in about 7 minutes the foremast went by the board, but the bowsprit held fast. Our pumps were kept continually working. The 3rd lieutenant, being on the quarterdeck, sent forward to me to clear and let go the small bower anchor, which was immediately done. We found the ship drove to shore very fast. At 10:30 we had 8 feet of water in the hold, and kept all the pumps working. About 11 we found the ship settle, the depth of water 12 or 14 fathoms. The anchor then brought the ship up, but the cable parted in a few minutes. Then we let go the sheet anchor, which was all we had. The sea now making a free passage over us again, broke and tore away our boats and booms. The sheet cable tore out with such violence that no person could venture near it till the clench brought up the ship. But the sea came with such force, and was so very high, that in the hollow of the sea the ship struck, and the cable immediately parted. It was now near 12 o'clock. The ship struck fore and aft, but abaft very hard. The 3rd lieutenant was near me when the ship first struck, but I saw no more of him afterwards. I kept the forecastle accompanied by the boatswain, cook, and about 8 more men. I got myself lashed to the bitts before the ship took heel, but shifted myself over to windward when she began to heel, and lashed myself as before, the sea continually beating over us. About 2, I saw the captain's cabin washed away, and the ship almost on her broadside. When daylight came, we were 16 men on the forecastle, and 4 hanging abaft to the timber heads, but 3 of the latter got upon a piece of the wreck which was loose, and drove away. The other was drowned. All this time the sea came over us in a dreadful manner, so that we could scarcely take breath. About 8 o'clock, 9 men were washed off the forecastle. We could not now see the trees on shore between the seas. At 9, the boatswain and cook were washed away from each side of me, on which I removed to the cat head, as did likewise another man. About 10, all our men were washed away, excepting those who were lashed to the cathead. We judged that we were about 2 miles off the shore. We continued there all the day, the sea beating over us incessantly, so that we had little time to fetch breath or speak to one another. At noon we found the sea to come every way upon us, and could perceive that the wind having shifted was the cause of it. This part of the wreck kept together, but night coming on, we had a dismal prospect before us, without any hopes of relief. About midnight the sea abated, so that we could speak to one another for the space of 2 or 3 minutes together. But I found myself so weak, having been sick ever since we arrived in the country, that when the sea washed me on one side in my lashing, I was not able to help myself up, but was obliged to get my companion to assist me. At daylight, I found myself much weaker and very thirsty. The sea at this time came over us once in a quarter of an hour. We found the wreck much nearer the shore than yesterday. About noon we found the sea much abated, so that it seldom came over us, and the weather began to be fine, but I felt extremely faint. About 2 or 3 o'clock we saw 2 paddy boats coming along shore, about a mile away from us. We spread out a handkerchief, which I had about my neck, that the boats might see us. One of them seemed to edge towards us for some minutes, but hauled off again. We then saw several catamarans near the shore, which we judged to be fishing. We spread abroad the handkerchief again, but none of them approached us. Soon afterwards we saw several people gather together on shore. The sun began to grow low, so that we judged it to be about 5 o'clock. At last we saw 2 of the catamarans above mentioned coming towards us, with 3 black men on each, who took us off the wreck and carried us on shore. As soon as we were landed, we found ourselves surrounded by about 300 armed men. My companion told me we had fallen into the hands of the Mahrattas, who were at this time at war with the English. They ordered us to come off the catamarans. I strove to rise, but I found myself so weak and my legs so terribly bruised that I could not get up, on which some of them came and lifted me off and laid me on the sand, for I was unable to stand. I made a signal to them that I wanted some water to drink, but they gave me none and only laughed at our condition. Their commander ordered them to strip us, which they did quite naked. As I was not able to walk, they led us part of the way to Cavecata, a fort belonging to them, and there put us into a canoe and carried us up a river to the walls of the fort. About 10 that night, they put us within the walls and laid us on the ground, where we had nothing to cover us but the heavens, and about 11 brought us a little rice with some water. Great numbers of people gathered round us, laughing at us and expressing great contempt and derision. The country people flocked daily to the fort to see us, but none of them showed us the least pity. On the contrary, they laughed and threatened us with death. We slept very little the first night on account of the cold and the risk we ran of our lives, these barbarians having signified that they would cut us in pieces with their sabers. When daylight appeared and the gates were opened, I was very ill. I had dysentery, and my legs were so much swelled that I concluded I had not long to live, at least if I did not receive some relief. I acquainted my comrade with my situation and begged him, if he ever should be so fortunate as to return to England, to inform my friends in what manner I had terminated my career. Some days we received rice, and others we had none. On the 7th day they gave me some lamp oil, with which I fomented my legs, and this simple application afforded me considerable relief. Our lodging place was between the gateways, and when we had been there 14 days, they carried us into the country. Though my legs were much better, yet still I could not walk, and my companion was extremely weak, which I believe was owing to the want of more victuals. So they put us into doolies or cradles, fastened together with ropes, which they got from the wreck. About 4 o'clock on the 15th day, they carried us about 12 miles to their king, who was encamped against our company's troops. That prince examined us a long time and inquired whether we were officers. I replied in the negative, conceiving that an acknowledgment of that kind would render our escape much more difficult. He was desirous that we should enter into his service, but we told him by means of the interpreters, who were 3 Dutchmen, that we could not consent to it. He promised we should want for nothing if we would accept his offers, but we persisted in replying that we were too ill to be capable of serving. He ordered refreshment to be given to us, of which we stood in great need, having scarcely taken any nourishment since the day we fell into the hands of his subjects. The interpreters asked us whether we chose to enter into the king's service or to go to prison, to which we answered that we could not resolve to fight against our countrymen. At sunset we departed. Our conductors having halted till 3 o'clock in the morning, we again set out and continued our march till noon, when they again stopped 2 hours to take some refreshment and afterwards directed their course to the southwest. We arrived that night at a fort and were immediately put into a dungeon. There we found 2 other prisoners, one of them our shipmate and the other a deserter from the company's troops. The next morning they opened the gates and made signs to us to come out. My companions complied, but I chose rather to stay where I was, as I found myself extremely weak and my legs were covered with ulcers. I begged them to give me a little lamp oil to foment them, which they did. Our only nourishment was water and a quart of rice a day, though there were 4 of us, and a small pot of grease instead of butter. I rubbed my legs with oil and grease, and on the 4th day found myself much better, which gave me fresh spirits. We were permitted to walk morning and evening before the dungeon. In about 3 weeks, my legs were almost well, so that I was able to walk. We began to entertain some hopes of making our escape, and taking an opportunity, I with some difficulty got high enough upon the wall to look over it, and found it was very lofty and surrounded with a wide moat or ditch. But there was a path between the wall and the ditch, so that we might choose our place to swim over if it proved deep. We got, several times, some strands of rope off the doolies which they had carried us in, as they happened to be left within the bounds of our liberty, and in a few days collected so many pieces that when knotted together they made several fathoms. After some consultation, we resolved to undermine the foundation of the dungeon at the farthest part from the guards, and on May 27th began to work. On June 1st we came to the foundation, being 6 feet deep, and the wall 30 inches through. In 2 days' time we had worked upwards, on the other side, so far that the light began to appear through the surface, so that we let everything remain till night. At 7, it beginning to grow dark, they put us into the dungeon as usual, and soon afterwards we worked ourselves quite out. Without being discovered, we got over the wall by the help of our rope, and in less than half an hour had crossed the moat, though very wide and deep. We traveled all night. We judged about 16 miles, and in the day hid ourselves among the bushes. The second night we traveled as before, to the southeast, and day coming on, we concealed ourselves among some rushes. About 3 in the afternoon we were discovered, which obliged us to go on, but we were not molested. We proceeded till about midnight, and then lay down till daybreak. I had a fever and was extremely weak for want of food. This day, which was the 3rd, we resolved to travel till noon, and to plunder the first house we might chance to meet with. But Providence was more favorable to us than we could have expected, for about 10 o'clock we met a coolie who told us he would show us to Caracal. About noon we arrived there, and were received with great humanity, but my fever was no better. The next morning the governor sent to Mr. Boscon to let him know we were there, and by the return of the messenger the admiral desired we might be furnished with what money we wanted. In about 12 days we found ourselves well recovered, and went to Tranquebar, a place belonging to the Danes, where we stayed 3 days, and got a passage for Fort St. David, where we arrived on June 23rd.